Hey everyone, so I just had a great conversation with Mel from plrofthemonth.club. She runs an online community where she helps people between the age of around 50 to 70 years old build and sell their content sites with the intention of using those funds to retire. In this call, I go over what they can do to get the highest valuation possible for their business and what they can do to build the most attractive business to buyers with the intention of selling their business as quickly as possible once they decide to post it on a marketplace or sell even privately. This is relevant even if you want to keep your business, because as you'll hear in the talk, the end goal really is the same, which is to create a business that's enjoyable to own, whether that's by you or a future buyer. So on that note, I hope you find it helpful.
And everyone, hello. I want to welcome everybody to our second special presentation of the Site Flippers Working Group. And today we have got a fantastic presentation. I cheated. I already had a chance to see the presentation that's going to be shared with you today by our guest speaker. And it's wonderful. That's all I'm going to say. It is so full of information. I can't wait to share it with everybody. Our guest speaker today is Nick Chi, who is a content specialist with empireflippers.com. And I've been asked, probably the number one question is, what is the difference between Empire Flippers and everybody else who's out there as a website marketplace? And I was not aware of this before Nick and I had a chance to speak a couple of weeks ago. And it's a big difference. They are a curated marketplace. And I liken that to kind of being the difference between eBay, who accepts pretty much anything and everything for sale, and a concierge white glove service, because that basically is what Empire Flippers does. And Nick brings a very unique perspective and background to us today, because he started out in the migration department, helping sites be transferred from the sellers to the new buyer, and is now a content specialist. And content specialist at Empire Flipper sounds like you wear a lot of hats over there, Nick. But basically, one of the big things that you do is you help write those listings for the new websites to be sold, correct?
Yep. Every Monday, or before every Monday.
Wow. And so it is a very different service from pretty much anything out there. And my understanding is that Empire Flippers is also the largest of the curated platforms.
Yep.
Well, with that, and now that you know the difference between Empire Flippers and everyone else, with that, I'm not going to sit here and chit chat anymore. And by the way, if you see me go on mute from occasion, I've got a bad cough again today. So don't take it personally, but I may be going offline a couple times during this call because I don't want to cough over Nick's presentation. And with that, Nick, I've made you co-host. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you because you've got a lot to share today. And by the way, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Mel, and thank you for that introduction. I hope I do that justice on this presentation.
You will, I have no doubt.
So when Mel reached out and I was thinking about what to talk about, I was just thinking about what I would like to hear, or what I wish I would have known. I mean, I think there were a lot of things that I obviously didn't know, even were getting trained up to start working within the brokerage. And that made me kind of think, wow, that for people who aren't trained in this, who's this isn't their full-time job, then there's just a lot that that just isn't known, and that I can't assume people know. So this is, I guess I'll share, good time to share my screen. Oops. All right. Share.
Should be down there at the bottom.
Yep.
A little bit to the left of center. There
Cool.
we go. And yes, we can see you.
Okay, perfect. So what I wanted to talk about was, and Mel told me a little bit about who is going to be on this call. And I understand that a lot of you have or are building sites for the purpose of exiting within a specific time period, so that you can retire, and or that a lot of you share that goal. So I'm honored to be a part of this call, and I hope that if in some way I do help you achieve that, you'll send me a message or just I don't know, post somewhere that I can see that, as I feel like that would make my entire career worth it. So thank you for having me. So what I wanted to talk about was about preparing your business for an exit, even if whether or not you're sure if you want to exit or not. So a little bit about me, as Mel had said. Actually, we'll talk about Empire Flippers first. So Mel had mentioned that this is the largest curated marketplace in the world for selling not only e-commerce stores, but a lot of different business models. We sell, I think, about 7 or 8 different business models, content sites, which include affiliate, Amazon Associates, display advertising, e-commerce, which include Amazon or other private websites, like if you have a Shopify store, SaaS businesses, apps, and KDP businesses. So we are the 5-time winner of the Inc. 5000 for fastest growing company in the US. We've done over 400 million in deals, and I might need to update that figure at this point. And then we have also a buyer network with over 4 billion in investable liquidity. So a little bit about who I am. So let's see, so I started out a little over 3 years ago at Empire Flippers, and I was a migration advisor. So I oversaw the post-sales transfer process from the seller to the buyer. So I've transferred over 130 online businesses and over 27 million in assets. And now, as in the marketing department, as a content marketing specialist, I interview entrepreneurs every week on the Real Money, Real Business podcast. So these are businesses that are listed on the marketplace that are over a certain threshold. As of right now, it's over 300,000. So I'll talk to them about just how they built the business, anything that they learned, and why they're selling the business too, which I'll get into in a little bit. And I also lead our YouTube channel. I create the content, video content for the channel. So I talk about a lot of different topics related to selling and buying businesses. All right. So preparing your business for an exit, even if you're unsure if you want to exit. And the reason why I include that last part is because, and this is my opinion, whether or not you believe you are building this business to exit or to hold on to it to just keep generating the profits from it, I believe that you're kind of trying to get to that same end point. And I'll talk about what the 7 different areas are. But ultimately, you're trying to, if you want to create a business that is exit worthy, you're trying to create a business that's profitable, that doesn't require a ton of your time down the road, and a few other variables that are ultimately a business that would also be an attractive business to keep. So I say that because sometimes when I'm telling business owners about just this information about how to prepare your business for an exit, for those who aren't sure if they want to exit, they might not think this is relevant information for them. But I really impress upon the idea that even if you keep it, this is still definitely relevant to you. So one of the first questions about I think a lot of people don't even realize they can sell their site. They'll build the site just thinking they want to build an online business for themselves. It doesn't sound like that is this audience, but one of the first questions is, how much can I sell my site for? So if you look at the Empire Flippers marketplace, you can just go to empireflippers.com and click on the marketplace to just look at the other content sites that are listed for sale. You'll see that they sell for about 5, usually within the 6-figure range, but we'll sell between 5 to maybe the 7-figure range. We do have at least for Empire Flippers, we have a minimum where any site that's listed, any business that's listed has to make at least, I believe it's right now $1,000 per month in net profit. And so that typically means the minimum sized business that you'll see on the marketplace is going to be about $35,000 to $40,000. Other brokerages, they don't have a minimum. Like if you look at Flippa or other brokerages, they you'll see some sites for as low as probably maybe a couple thousand, or I don't know, maybe even cheaper than that. So I think before, in addition to talking about how much your business is worth, I think it's important to understand how valuations are calculated. I think it's a pretty it's pretty obscure until you kind of look at, maybe work with a brokerage, or actually go through the process of valuing your business, like what actually goes into the valuation. And it's actually a pretty basic calculation. It's just your monthly net profit times a valuation multiple. And your monthly net profit is more obviously going to be the objective figure here. It's just, if you work with Empire Flippers, we actually have a vetting department, and they will help to build your P&L. So they'll list out all of your revenue sources on each month and all of your expenses, and then they'll help you to calculate the net profit for each month, and then they'll average that out, usually over 12 months. So that's that first figure. Then the second figure is the valuation multiple, which is a more subjective figure, but it's also a multiple that our vetting team will assign, and it's more a reflection of the I guess the value of your business, or how, pretty much it's what do we think we would be able to sell the business for, I get, is from a buyer's perspective. And the valuation multiple is typically going to be between maybe 35x to maybe as high as 50x. And this can vary depending on the site itself, but also depending on just like if we're in a seller's market or a buyer's market. So are buyers buying a lot of sites, then the valuation multiple tends to be a bit higher. So the real question then is, what are buyers looking for? And I think what you're looking for when you're thinking about how to grow your site, how to prepare it for an exit, or how to build a site that's worthy or that could exit, you're really asking about how to maximize your valuation multiple, and how can I have the quickest sale possible. So it's not unheard of. It's not common, or it's not, I guess it's not, yeah, it's not super common, but it's not unheard of for our businesses that go live every Monday, for some of those businesses to be bought that same day or within a few hours. So I think when thinking about the ideal scenario, it's like, what could I do to get my site valued at, I don't know, in the 40s range, and how could I potentially make it a site that somebody would want to buy the day that it's listed. So there are 7 different areas that I thought were some of the most important that buyers look for related to a business. And the first is going to be the traffic and revenue trajectory. So are you seeing a year-over-year incline in revenue and traffic? Is it stable over the years, or are you seeing a decline? And if you fall within that last category of declining traffic and revenue, maybe due to just current market conditions, but like economic decline, I just want to say all is not lost as far as you selling your business. There are buyers actually that are even shopping for businesses that fall in this category, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. So the other part is our seasonal patterns. So some sites may be, especially like, for example, like a water sports site, you'll see a lot of traffic and revenue during the summer seasons, the summer months, and then maybe close to nothing during the winter months. That's not terrible. It's just a different type of business. Then then I guess what a little bit from seasonal patterns are the sharp spikes or drops. And this is more of like, is there something that indicates your site was impacted, whether negatively or positively, by a Google algorithm update? And maybe more important to that is, what does that say about the site? And that's the reason why I say here sites with 3 or more years of history tend to be sites that buyers feel more comfortable acquiring because it just gives them more data to look at as far as how did a site weather those algorithm updates, and can I pretty much see any patterns that will make me feel confident that that will be how the site continues to perform after I, as a buyer, acquire that business. So that's traffic and revenue. And next are the multiple traffic streams. So a lot of your websites probably drive a majority of your traffic organically, and that's fine. That's probably even expected. But for the sites that drive other traffic streams, those tend to stand out. So, do you have an email list? Are you driving traffic from social platforms, maybe even through paid ads? And the reason why buyers will look at this is because they, if one of these traffic streams, including organic, declines, will this investment continue to generate revenue? Will my business not disappear overnight if one of these traffic streams declines? And that tends to be more of a relevant topic of conversation right now regarding organic, especially as we have things like ChatGPT in the mix, and just things that could affect organic ranking of sites. So this is one way of just showing that you are diversifying your investment essentially. The next is traffic quality. So do you have backlinks from other reputable websites? Do you have the multiple organic sources of traffic? So going back to the email list, and this just kind of it speaks a bit to the quality of your site when you have to see what other websites are linking to your site. Next are the revenue streams. So we talked about traffic streams, now are our revenue streams. So the multiple revenue streams, if you go to the Empire Flippers marketplace, you have an option to select the niche. You'll see that you can select affiliate, Amazon Associates, or display ads. You'll notice that a lot of these sites actually drive revenue through a combination of these sources. So are you working with private affiliates? Are you working with Amazon Associates? Are you running display advertising? Maybe do you have some ebooks or courses? I actually had another interview with somebody named John Ainsworth, who owns Data Driven Marketing, and he helps people to with courses. So that can be a really great way to improve your monthly revenue. So similar to the traffic, buyers want to know if one of their revenue streams are impacted. For example, Amazon Associates. If you all have been running if you have Amazon Associates, if you're driving revenue through Amazon Associates and you've been doing that for a few years, you probably remember when Amazon decided to change their commission structure, I think 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. So I remember that because, as I was telling Mel, I was asked to reach out to everyone on the marketplace. So I had to revalue all of the businesses that were driving revenue through Amazon Associates and contact everyone impacted on our marketplace whose valuation essentially was impacted. So for some of those sites, they were pretty significantly impacted. So I think for me that was a real-time example of why it's important to have these different revenue streams.
I hope you got combat pay for that, because I don't think that would have been fun.
Yeah, telling somebody that they were no longer a millionaire was not fun.
No.
Yeah. So multiple revenue streams. And next is the owner's time spent. And this is one of the points I was thinking about when I thought whether or not you decide to exit your business or hold on to it. this is an important variable to consider, because I think a lot of people think, oh, I want to continue being involved in my business and continue operating the site, and so I enjoy it even, and so I'm fine with spending 20 to 40 hours a week on the site, and that's great that you enjoy the business, but there might be a time where you do want to decrease the amount of time spent, and there might be a time where you change your mind and you do want to exit the business. All in all, I think it makes sense, whether you or not you want to exit or keep it, to set up systems that enable you to essentially replace yourself or replace parts of yourself. So when I'm writing the listings that go live every Monday, I will actually include a point on the description that of the businesses that require minimal time to maintain. I'll write that if a business takes 10 hours or less of the owner's time, not the total time. So if they have a system where they've hired out contractors who are creating content on a weekly basis, or maybe some sites they're currently not creating content, so it requires a lot less. But yes, to be able to see that there are systems in place, that's what a buyer wants. The buyers do not typically want to acquire full-time jobs. So 10 hours or less is kind of a sweet spot to go for. I think some of the resistance that I've heard, or one point of pushback, is that this could cut into the profit margins of the business if you are going from writing all of your own content to now hiring out. If I had to choose between two businesses, one that made uh, two similar sites, one that made more profit but required 15 hours per week versus one that had made less profit but took 5 hours a week to maintain, I feel pretty confident that a buyer, assuming everything else is equal, that a buyer would go for the one with 10 hours or less. Now, there are buyers who, if your profit is high enough, they might look at that and think, I can use some of that profit to then hire out a team, but that just requires that type of buyer to be willing to do that. So just something to take into consideration here for owners' time spent. Okay. And wait, let me see. Do I have any questions? Just checking out. 10 hours per week or per month? That's a weekly. Yes. Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, I think I caught most of them. I do have one question that kind of is relevant to where we're at right now. When you talk about the website that sells in a matter of a couple of hours, are those two pros people who are, buying and flipping websites, or are those two first-time buyers? Do you have any idea what the breakdown is on what type of buyers make that kind of snap decision? And
Mhm.
I will also make another comment. I would have to think that Empire Flipper's reputation for vetting the websites and how you manage the entire sale, that has to also play into that quick sale as well. Because on another website where it could just be, anybody from anywhere who's selling that website, I don't think they're going to sell that quickly.
Yeah, that's true. There's okay, so I'm gonna answer the first part, which is about what type of buyers are buying those businesses as quickly as the day of. So there are, so I'm just going to speak from my experience. I will say that the best way to get kind of real-time information on that is to speak to a sales advisor who is connected to the current marketplace and who is speaking with buyers about what they're looking for right now. So oftentimes there are conversations already being had with buyers about what they're looking for, and then there could be sites that come through that are listed that fit within that criteria. But the buyers that I was thinking of when I was referring to this are ones with more experience. So a couple years ago, during the height of the pandemic, e-commerce was huge. A lot of people were buying online, and e-commerce businesses were also getting really big. And so there were these groups of what are called aggregators or e-commerce aggregators who were who received investment to pretty much buy a portfolio of e-commerce businesses. And there are also aggregators who buy portfolios of websites. But pretty much they had the funding and they had to buy businesses within a certain size. And so the competition for buying these businesses was pretty high. And so people had to, because it was a seller's market, people had to pull the trigger very quickly to buy those businesses, or they would be purchased by somebody else. And that's another benefit of working with us through the brokerages. And that's probably the best scenario that you can be in, is if you are in a if your site is being like pretty much competed for, that tends to incentivize sellers to pull the trigger very quickly. Now there might be some contingencies, like we'll go through a due diligence period. We're going to pull the trigger, but we're going to go through a due diligence period and make sure that pretty much everything, that all the numbers check out, and then we'll be buying the site. But yeah, that was what I was first thinking about.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Yes, the videos. Maybe I'll keep some of those. I see one about ChatGPT affecting site ranking. Should I get to that towards the end?
Yeah, let's hold off on that because I have a feeling that's a big topic right now, obviously.
Okay. All right. And some other features which are of varying importance. So this is one that I kept towards the end, but some especially more experienced buyers will look at kind of the strength, the more objective strength of a website, looking at the domain rating. They'll also look at some more subjective parts of it, like the branding of the site and the website age. Now, I think last time I was speaking with Mel, she was talking about, when I brought up this point about branding, she was talking about we got on the topic of branding yourself, like your own picture, or or your own voice on the website, and how that can create some issues with the sale itself. So there are, as far as branding goes, I have seen sellers who put themselves on the site and are essentially personally branding themselves to the site. I would say for those, if the site is, if there's a very clear path for being able to either keep the branding, if the seller is comfortable with keeping the branding as it is, but the site wouldn't decline by them stepping away from it, like if they're just using their photo on the website, the site won't decline. Or if there's a way to remove their picture altogether without impacting the business, and possibly even doing that prior to deciding to list the business for sale. And that's a point you're going to want to discuss with a sales advisor if you want to do that. So there are ways of either it not impacting the decision to purchase the business, or to resolve that prior to listing. Okay. And next are the growth opportunities. And this is, so if I just went through, I think, 6 different areas, and you might be thinking, man, these are so many different things that I need to do for my business. I just want to talk about growth opportunities here, because a site that is performing well despite its imperfections is what a buyer is looking for. Because a site that's perfect and doesn't have anything that they can add to it, a buyer wouldn't know how to increase the valuation of that business. There are some buyers who want to buy the business just to have a relatively passive source of income. They just want to keep the site as is. But I guess I want to discuss this point to let you know that you don't have to do all of these different things. In fact, a site that's performing well, that has some very exciting growth opportunities, are in some cases what cause buyers to buy a site quickly. So some of the quick wins are just could you create more content similar to the content that's currently performing? Can you work with a new display ad partner to increase the monthly revenue just by working with another partner? Some of the longer term changes, which are, does your site create content that would make sense to add, like sell a physical product or have some sort of e-commerce component, maybe an ebook of some sort? And do you have an email list that maybe you have created an email list, but you're not currently monetizing it, or a social channel and you're not currently monetizing it? So a few things of what not to do. So I would avoid black hat techniques. We do have to be transparent with any listing that we put out that uses a PBN. And also, as I mentioned before, buyers are looking for those spikes or dips in historic in traffic figures. So those dips could be an indication that certain black hat techniques were used. But during those, you will be asked about why the site has dipped, and you'll have to explain why. And in some cases, it has, like, you might have been hit by a Google algorithm update and you might not be doing anything that's black hat, but if you were, then you will have to explain that. So I would just encourage you to avoid growing your site in that way, and then also avoiding duplicate or plagiarized content. Our vetting team will do a sweep for that, but also the buyers will likely be looking at that as well. There are some other considerations as far as if you want to be listed on a brokerage, and I'll speak just on behalf of Empire Flippers because other brokerages might have different requirements. So we do require most of the site's language to be in English. And there are some niches that are not sold on at least our brokerage. So like in the gambling niche. So if you're considering building a site and you haven't built it yet, then just taking some of these points into consideration. And right now so there are certain challenges that I guess the market is different right now. I mentioned a couple of years ago how it was a seller's market and how people are just really competing to tripping over each other to buy businesses. Right now, you're looking at a different type of market, and there are and we're looking at an economic decline. There are layoffs, and so right now, sites that are seeing the stable traffic and the stable revenue, or even growing traffic and revenue despite the current economic condition, are looking attractive. But then there are also buyers who, as I mentioned before, if your site is currently experiencing a decline because of the economic conditions, there are buyers who are still looking at that. And I guess when Mel and I were talking last time, we were talking about pretty much they're looking for ways to buy at a discount. And I'm not to devalue the site, because they still see it as a valuable site. In fact, that's why they're buying it, because they feel confident that the reason why they're seeing that decline is because of these economic conditions, and they feel confident that it's going to either turn around just by those conditions inevitably becoming more favorable, or that they can implement a certain growth opportunity that they think can turn around the business. Mel and I were talking about it similar to buying Halloween candy after Halloween. I was going to say it was kind of similar to just buying a stock that you think associated with the company that you think is built off of a solid foundation that will return once the economy stabilizes. And the reason why I bring that up too is because if you feel like that describes your site, and you are deciding whether or not you think it's the right time for you to sell, you really want to sell it, and that could be a way that you choose to communicate with buyers and choose to highlight those features, that it's built off of a solid foundation, but ultimately it's been impacted by the current economic condition. And then ChatGPT, that seems to be a topic of conversation every week, and it's changing.
Yeah.
So even right now, it's hard to tell where that's going to go. It feels like the ground is shifting beneath our feet. But I will say that because there are certain buyers who have expressed some concern over ChatGPT as far as competitors coming into the space for certain niches. And to that, I just say all the more reason to diversify traffic streams. So if you can start building an email list or a social channel, or if you can even run paid ads, assuming they're profitable. But yes, just all the more reason to diversify. So another common question is, when is the right time to sell? When should I sell my business? So a few thoughts on timing the market. When 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when just everything was booming, all of the e-commerce, I'll just use e-commerce as an example again. E-commerce businesses were booming. Some sellers decided to sell at that point, and some owners decided to hold on to it to hold on to the to pretty much keep the profits. And that's completely fine to do, but they were trying to time the market to pretty much sell when it was still hot, but they were, I don't know, they made the profit that they wanted to during the peak season when they could squeeze the juice out of it. And now they're having a harder time selling those businesses, and the valuations may have declined significantly just because their revenue has declined. The market overall has shifted to where the valuation multiples have declined. So my thoughts are, it doesn't make sense to time the market, because you don't, similar to a stock, you just don't know where the market's going to go. And maybe unlike a stock, you can't like just click a button to sell your business the next day if you see that the market is declining. It takes time. So I would say, to decide when is the right time for you to sell is going to be based on your personal reasons. So I mentioned I interview sellers on a weekly basis, and I always ask them about why they're deciding to sell their business instead of holding on to it. So the most common reasons are, one, they have enjoyed the building phase, but once it gets into the operating phase, they don't like it as much, or they don't want to scale the business now. So taking the business to level 2, they see that in order to take it to that next level, it requires either capital or time or focus or another skill set that they just don't want to commit to. And that's actually a really great position to be in, because a buyer might be looking for a business where they have the capital and they just want to buy a business that's working, to where they can see that their capital can just turn the make the business explode pretty much. And so that's a great position to be in. Also, it's very common for business owners to have other projects or other investments. So if they maybe want to buy a house, if they see another business that they're working on, I mean, the that characteristic or that trait that got you into building this business is probably the same characteristic that has you thinking about other business opportunities. So that's a very common reason. And then also a new life phase. So if they are, I've heard a lot about starting a family or wanting to retire. So when they feel like that phase of life is something that they want to focus on, or they want to have the capital for, or they just don't want to have to think about that business, because even if a business does take less than 10 hours per week to run, it can commonly take a lot more than 10 hours just in your headspace and you thinking about the business. So those are some of the main reasons. And of all of the different ways that I mentioned, you can improve the business, changes you can make, what I would say is decide on some of these changes based on if you want to exit from 6 to 12 months, or if your goal is to exit over in a year or later. So for 6 to 12 months, since you are trying to sell earlier, I'd recommend some less major changes. The reason being, if a buyer sees you've made a major change to a business and you are trying to sell that business in 3 months, they're going to want to see that you see how the business responds to that major change. So uh, I would recommend you saving any of those to 12 months out, where maybe you want to, uh, I don't know, maybe you want to change an ad partner altogether. Maybe you want to cut your expenses by cutting parts of your team. So if you're thinking about making any of these changes, I would first recommend speaking with a sales advisor to just make sure that, given your timeline for when you want to exit, that it's okay pretty much for you to make that kind of change to try to increase your valuation.
Basically, you want to give yourself time to build up some history from whatever change you make, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
everybody, I want you to really embed everything that's on this slide, because I think out of this entire presentation, for most of us on this call, this is one of the most important slides in here, because we're all looking at correcting things that we might have done when we first started our websites, because we didn't start it with an exit strategy. And this right here tells you what you can and can't change right now, depending on what your time frame is to sell. But basically, whatever changes you make, you want to make sure you're allowing yourself enough time to build up a history for that buyer to see before you put it on the market. This is uber important slide.
Yep. All right. So another common question is selling private or through a brokerage. So you've decided that you do want to sell, but you don't know if it's best to sell through a brokerage or sell privately. By privately, I mean like on a Facebook community or some kind of business buying community. It's perfectly fine for you to go either way. I guess just know what you're getting into with both paths. So with a brokerage, on Empire Flippers, you have a verified buyer marketplace. So the buyers have to create an account, verify their identity, and show proof of liquidity. So show proof that they are capable of buying a business and they're not just there to pretty much look for business ideas. And also with the brokerage, this is different for every brokerage. You could potentially have support with all phases of the exit. So a large part of that, at least for Empire Flippers, let's just go through that process. So you work with our vetting team, who will help you compile all of your financial information and create that valuation for you. You'll have the sales team who works with our buyers and potentially negotiates deals with you, and reaches out to the marketplace, finds who might be a good fit for your specific business. And then one thing that Empire Flippers has that I don't think any other brokerage has is a migrations department. So it's the post-sales phase, and this is the role that I had coming into Empire Flippers. It's assistance with actually transferring the business from you to the buyer, and that's important because that determines when you get paid. In working through Empire Flippers, we need confirmation that the business has been transferred over, and there are many different ways that transfer can go wrong. It's not just a matter of, in most cases, it's not just a matter of changing out the username and the password and they own your business. There are a lot of different assets that are comprised of different businesses. So, and depending on those different assets, some of those can have terms of service that make it difficult to transfer over. So I say that because if you decide to sell privately, you're going to want to become pretty well versed in how to transfer those assets because you'll be on your own. Also, if you decide to work with other brokerages, in most cases, you're still on your own after the sale. So you're still going to have to figure out how to transfer that over. One content site asset that comes to mind is with AdSense. AdSense is notoriously difficult, notorious, I guess, internally for being difficult to transfer over. So we've developed a specific process, and we're just very careful about how we do that. So just make sure that you prioritize that phase as much as everything, the pre-sale phase, because it's just heartbreaking when you go through that entire process of valuing the business, finding a buyer, negotiating, getting the deal closed, and then just having the deal fall to pieces after the fact. So I guess the biggest benefit, though, of going private is that you're not paying a commission, but just note that to maximize your chance of success, you're going to likely be paying for those individual services. So you're going to want to protect yourself. So hiring a lawyer to develop the contract, you have a third-party escrow service to hold on to the funds, and have it very clearly defined when those funds can be released to you. Maybe ideally even finding somebody, a professional who can transfer those assets over to you post-sale. Okay. And one thing, if you feel like a brokerage is the best option for you, one thing to look for when shopping for a brokerage are looking at inflated multiples and exclusivity. So on some brokerages, you might see when you speak to them, they might give you a super high multiple compared to some other brokerages that give you an estimate for the multiple. Just watch out for that, because one thing that has happened is you'll get this inflated multiple, but you'll have to sign for maybe 6 months of exclusivity to be listed with them. So you sign with them at a super high multiple, but then you realize that buyers are simply not buying for that multiple. So, and you don't have the option but to sell anywhere else. So you have to stay on the marketplace for 6 months. And that's sometimes used to kind of pressure business owners to reduce their multiple in order to pretty much get buyer interest. Also, working with brokerages that have a protected marketplace. So as I mentioned, we verify our buyers. We also have, you also have to, as a buyer, you have to unlock a business. So only verified buyers can unlock the business listing to see more of the details, to see the domain itself, to see the details on the P&L. So that's just one layer of added protection. Whereas other brokerages, it's pretty much you can see all of the business. So it's just not as protected. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, the service is included. Is there a migration service? So these are just questions to ask any brokerage that you're considering working with if they offer these specific types of services, because you can't assume that they will offer that. And as mentioned before, I think it's important to speak with someone well before the exit, as opposed to just when you decide that you do want to exit. I think it's a kind of an unused hack almost to just speak with an Empire Flipper sales advisor. No requirement or pressure to sell with us on the brokerage, but you can just speak with somebody who does this every single day about your specific goals, can provide clarity and a roadmap for you to tell them, all right, this is my business, where it's at right now. I want to sell within 18 months, and I would like to get this to this valuation. And I'm thinking about implementing these specific growth techniques in order to achieve that. Do you think that's okay to do based upon this information? And they can give you some advice, or they can tell you maybe don't do that. Yeah, so I think it's just good to speak with somebody about that.
I did not know that that was something that your company did. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't want to speak with somebody yet, we do also have a free valuation tool, which you can go to just to see what your business is potentially worth right now. Uh, or you can also look at our marketplace to see kind of like if you know what your monthly net profit is, then you can look at other businesses on the marketplace that also have that around that same net. And of course, they're at a different valuation multiple, but you can kind of see what those businesses are selling for. So I would recommend just trying out those tools. And also, if you want to connect with me, I left my information below, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions or congratulate you in the future, or receive any news that you sold your site.
Oh, I have a feeling you're going to be hearing from several of us that are going to be selling our site
I
within
hope
the next
so.
few months. Yes. Um, Thank you so much. I mean, did I lie, folks? Was this filled with information or what? Fantastic presentation. I picked up, even I've got pages of notes now, and that's silly because I've got the video. I'm going to be able to go back and watch it again, but there was still so much that I wanted to take down and come back and ask questions later. And we already answered several of them, but going back to the reputation of vampire flippers, I've actually gone into some forums and things and seen some truly outstanding comments that were made by apparently sellers. And you guys have a stellar reputation, literally 5-star out there. I have to think that when it comes down, I mean, that whole vetting service that you're talking about, when it comes down to trying to get the maximum price for my business, because my website is my business, um, it's like selling your home with the best real estate broker in town, the one who's got access to the best pool of buyers out there, because they have a trusted reputation. And I have to think that if we want to sell our website for top dollar, you want to go with somebody who's got that trusted reputation. That has to make a difference.
The reputation does play a huge role. And so first of all, I just want to make a note about the valuation. When you a little bit of insight into that, how that conversation looks, they will, based upon their assessment of your site, when they assign the valuation multiple, that's more of a conversation. It's what we feel confident we would be able to sell the business at. But also, if you are uh, feeling like and I use that carefully to say feeling, because I know business owners are very emotionally connected to their site. But if you feel like it should be at a different multiple, like that's a conversation that we can have with you. So we are working with you to try. We're both sides are incentivized to try to sell the site. So we want to work with you. But as far as how important trust is in this industry, uh, I saw that as a migration advisor. Um, so with working on a brokerage at Empire Flippers, when you go through the migration process, the business goes through an inspection period, a 14-day inspection period, and if the site drops below 50% of the average monthly revenue, like that was listed when the buyer bought the business, the buyer does have the opportunity to pretty much either renegotiate or to back out of the deal. A lot of sellers, when they first hear this, they think, well, I mean, that kind of like, I don't want that. I want to, like, I don't want any requirement, chance for them to back out of the deal. But they see the benefit of that when, for example, the site hits 51% and the buyer is required to move forward with the business. So it goes both ways, and we try really hard to find that right balance where we're looking out both for the buyer and the seller at the same time. And it's a tough balancing act to achieve. But when I have to have those conversations about, hey, the business is at 51% or it's at 49%, I have to be able to have those conversations and say, hey, like the integrity of our brokerage is the most important thing here, and we have to stick with these parameters. And my job as a migration advisor was to pretty much just enforce the contract and make sure that I was acting as a neutral third party to help the deal go through. And yeah, always having to act, make sure that throughout that potentially, uh, like a lot could happen during that time. So throughout that process, that I was just working with integrity and looking out for both interests.
I can honestly tell you, I've never bought any websites. I have sold quite a few. I can honestly tell you, I would much rather have somebody like you having those conversations with the buyer than me having to have them directly. Those are not easy conversations to
Yeah.
have, no matter which direction. And I've been very fortunate in that most of my deals have gone through without a hitch. But I have heard some real horror stories in situations and in other kind of peripheral but related online transactions where because there was no third party who was handling everything. There might have been an escrow company, but an escrow company is not acting. They're just holding the funds. They're not going
Yep.
to have that dialogue or those discussions. And I've seen too many deals fall apart completely that were good deals, but egos come into play and personalities come into play. Everybody's
Yeah.
money works, but sometimes the egos don't mesh.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and so you find one little thing that gets blown completely out of proportion, and suddenly a deal that should have and could have gone through doesn't. So I think that having that third party, like you say, straddle that fence and walk on both sides for both parties, that is just really, really an important feature.
Yeah. And it makes me kind of, I haven't gone through the process with other brokerages, but I just can't imagine what happens there after that for
Yeah,
that process, because I've heard so many different things on both sides. And if you're deciding to sell privately, that's why it's so important to make sure you are protected legally, because so many things can happen along the way to where if your money is sitting with an escrow and a buyer says, nope, I want to back out of the deal. So like third party escrow, don't release the funds. Uh, like so many different things can happen. I've had to talk to sellers who hit that 49% or 30% or something. And this was actually as a result of the Amazon Associates commission update. Like I
oh
was
yeah.
an advisor during that time and it hit some of
Oh,
these businesses. And and it made complete sense. The seller said, Nick, I feel like I'm being punished for something that I didn't do. And that's really what it came down to. And so there's a lot of emotional attachment to that. Ultimately, the deal went through uh and both sides were satisfied with an unfortunate situation. But like there's so much emotion that happens within the deal.
yeah.
It's such a tense point because this is often the biggest windfall that most sellers experience ever. And it's just like right there. So yeah, it's important to have somebody in your corner along the way.
Absolutely. I'm sure you had some tough conversations on that one, without a doubt. Because that was almost what, a 50% cut on commissions back then. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic when they announced that they were cutting commissions by 50% across most niches.
It depended, yeah, it varied depending on the specific niche. Some were less impacted, but yeah, just depending on what niche you were in, you could have seen a huge drop.
And of course, in internet marketing anyway, a lot of us are content creators, content marketers, quote unquote professional bloggers. Um, you know, it kind of goes with the wind sometimes. Your affiliate marketing, there is sort of a rule of thumb in the internet marketing world that you make $1 per month per name on your mailing list. Yeah, sometimes that works out really well, but it's not, there's no guarantee. And so I can see where that from the seller standpoint, that would be kind of scary. With my luck, that would be the month that, for whatever reason, everything I'm promoting didn't sell.
Mm,
So that would be what would happen to me. But from the buyer's standpoint, that has got to give a certain sense of relief and protection to know that, yeah, if there is that kind of unpredictable drop, I now have the right to be able to say yay or nay, I'm going to move forward. You know, I can see where if it was 47%, okay, I'll probably still go ahead because it's close enough. But if it's down to 30%, then we're going to start questioning the purchase. So yeah, I think that's a good protection. We've got a couple of questions over here, and I'll shoot over to in a moment. But my question for you: we talked about brokerage fees. What does it cost to list and sell my property with Empire Flippers? Is there a sliding scale or?
Yeah, it is a sliding scale. Let me see, Empire. So I think at the baseline, it's 15% of the, actually here we go. I'm going to put this into the, I just posted the commission calculator. So what you could do is you can run your business through the valuation calculator, get an estimate for that, and then enter that list price into the commission calculator. But so I think it's 15. Okay, so yeah, it does say it right below there. So under $700,000 site would be a flat 15%, and then 700,000 up to 5 million would be 15% on the first 700,000, and then reduced 8% on the amount above from 700,000 to 5 million.
That's not bad at all for what you guys do. I think that's worth every penny. Ganti's got a question for you here. He says, I am looking for starting a fresh site on a fresh domain and want to exit in 6 to 12 months. I have the capability of bringing traffic and get the site high in SERPs and have 1,500 to 2,000 income per site. And Ganti, I'm going to ask you, is that income or revenue?
That will be revenue per site.
Okay. And then he goes, okay. And then he goes on to say, and I'm going to assume what your profit is maybe going to be 50%. Because your multiplier is going to be based on your profit, not your revenue. So to extend the question, what sites get favored to sell faster? Number one, site approved by Mediavine and the like with 50,000 site visitor and 1,500 to 2,000 income. Or site is generating income purely based on ClickBank, ShareASale, and other private merchant networks promoting both physical and digital products, same revenue. Or a hybrid site that is a combination of ad network plus promoting ClickBank, ShareASale, etc.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about the mouthful.
Oh, no, it's a good question.
Good question.
My first inclination is to say the hybrid site, just based upon the diversity.
Yeah.
I know there has been questions about Mediavine, like if the traffic drops during the sale, and then Mediavine, and you're no longer qualified with Mediavine, are you still able to monetize through Mediavine? So yeah, going back to just having as much diversity as possible.
Yeah. Goes back to the old multiple streams of revenue, doesn't it? Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. What are the bad niches right now? What would you, aside from the ones that you don't accept, what would you advise people to kind of stay away from?
The best niches, I think that's might be the best way to answer this.
Yes, probably.
Tend to be the evergreen ones. So evergreen, both in terms of ideally like seasonality, they're consistent over the year, but also evergreen in terms of it's not a fad and it is still relevant. At maybe a bonus point, it's still relevant during economic decline. And I just say economic decline because that's top of mind right now. So and that could change when that's no longer top of mind, if it doesn't become top of mind. But yeah, niches that tend to be relevant regardless of potential changes.
So when you say niches that are relevant, how are they usually monetized? I mean, is ClickBank still popular? Are the ad networks such as Google and Mediavine and the rest of those, are those more relevant, or are physical products versus digital products?
Okay, so so for content sites, I guess I've personally seen ClickBank a lot less frequently, just in terms of my time with migrating the sites that do have that. The most common by far seems to be a combination of private affiliate partners plus Amazon Associates and display. It's like it seems like those three are the most common. So like I tend to see that with like some of these bigger evergreen niches like pet care or baby niches, or yeah.
And when you're talking about private affiliate networks or partners, mean like the big pet stores, Petco and things like that, and monetizing through those kind of relationships.
Yeah. So like if a lot of these larger sites, they're well versed in setting up affiliate partnerships. Like they have established affiliate programs. So yeah, like niches where there are well-established affiliate programs with some of these larger companies.
Yeah,
definitely.
Like CJ and ShareASale.
Yeah, but thinking more in terms of like if you have a pet store, for example, Chewy.com and Petco.com, they've got major affiliate programs, and they approve the merchants one-on-one. Unlike ClickBank, where you basically go in and you can get approved for anything, they just randomly, approve everyone. But some of the and like you find through Commission Junction and ShareASale, you have to qualify. There is more of a vetting process to actually get into those programs.
Yeah, one thing to note about ShareASale as well, I don't know if it's specifically ShareASale, but I remember when migrating certain assets, some of these affiliate accounts or networks, you have to, in order to transfer it, the buyer has to reapply for that program, as opposed to being able to just hand over the entire account entirely. So that can make that process a little bit more difficult, and sometimes, especially if an ad partner or affiliate partner does not accept or approve that new buyer, then that can create some issues. So
do you see that ever happening with Amazon? And because Amazon does have restrictions now as far as certain states don't even allow Amazon affiliates.
So you mean Amazon Associates program?
Associates, yes.
Yeah. So what I saw, and this might have changed a little bit, but the buyer has to become approved of Amazon Associates, and they're going to sweep the site again in order to go through that approval process. So, so what we do is we make sure that the site does have some of the important things, like it does have the disclaimer saying that it's monetized through affiliates. And because in the past, sometimes Amazon Associates, when they do the sweep again, with their revised process, they're more diligent now. They'll say, hey, we noticed this site doesn't have this, and so we don't approve. And so we have to update those things, maybe add more content or freshen up some content to qualify with the new parameters that Amazon Associates has, and then we'll resubmit it for approval on the buyer side.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask this question. If you were starting a site from scratch today, and I won't ask you a niche, but what would you monetize it with to sell it 18 months from now?
If I was starting a site today, so I think I would be a combination of, I'm just thinking about where I could make money the fastest with going the display ad route and the Amazon and affiliate route. I would try to go with a combination of probably Amazon Associates and then display advertising. And my goal would be to use a display ad partner that I can work with. Now we're talking strategy, but use a display ad partner that I could work with early on, but then my goal would be to get to that like Mediavine status to where I'm working with a reputable ad partner, or to be right there to where I can sell that as a selling point to a buyer who would be interested in that.
And what do you see as far as ad networks, display ads, as being probably the most popular and maybe the most consistent in revenue generation as far as the sites that you see have come through the door? I mean, everyone I think looks at Mediavine as being their ultimate target, but there's a lot of other ad networks out there.
The ones that I had the most experience were Mediavine, AdThrive, AdSense. Might be missing one. AdSense. So I personally would try to avoid AdSense if possible, just because I know how difficult it is to migrate that type of business.
Yeah.
But early on, if I don't have 50,000 visitors per month, then I will be looking
picky. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Getting very selective.
Yeah, I feel like I'm missing one more, but off the top of my head.
Ezoic?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh man, Ezoic loves / hates the migration department because we are always, they know of us very well because we are in direct communication with them when we migrate a business.
I would imagine.
Can I ask a question on Ezoic? Previously, a few years back, when Ezoic used to put ads on your site, sometimes your site used to break, sometimes the where you are putting your site sometimes doesn't agree with it. So I hope you didn't see any of those problems recently with Ezoic.
With sites breaking that have Ezoic?
Yeah, because depending upon what kind of a theme you are using on your WordPress site, sometimes their ads, when they have their own way they frame their ads into the site that we have. So sometimes it used to break the site.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that happening, but that would, if you were to list your site that was monetized with Ezoic, which is pretty common, the most, I guess, where that would be most relevant for the site breaking is during the migration process. Well, I guess anywhere because you would still have to communicate with the potential buyer that happened, but during the migration process, because when like during the inspection period specifically, when something like that could drop the revenue below 50%. If that happened, if I was the migration advisor on that and that happened, I would probably pause the inspection period and just communicate with the buyer and say, hey, this is what we're experiencing. We're going to get this back on track. And once I can see that we're back on track and that revenue has stabilized, then we're going to continue the inspection period from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions. That's all right. Got a couple of questions about social media accounts and mailing lists. I'm going to break this out into two questions because I've got one to add in here. As far as social media accounts, can you actually migrate social media accounts over to the new buyer, or is that something that's just kind of fall off and we really shouldn't focus, for example, on driving a lot of traffic from Facebook?
Yeah. So Facebook pages seem to be fine. We just add a new admin to that group, and then we have the new owner remove the original admin. It gets a little bit tricky when it's a Facebook business page. So if you do want to do Facebook, I would recommend not creating a Facebook business page, because that has become or was a nightmare in the past. I'm not sure if they've resolved some of those things, but yeah, that just gets very tricky.
Other Facebook groups
and pages are like, as long as it's not associated with a Facebook business page account, I guess is the best way to say that, then both of those have been easy to transfer over.
And how about mailing list? We're also cognizant of the CAN spam and GDPR and all of these different regulations and restrictions we have now on emailing. What is there some paragraph, some little caveat that we need to be sure is included in our terms of service to allow us to transfer the rights to the mailing list along with the website? And what's kind of a minimum size mailing list that a new buyer wants to see?
I'm not aware of any terms of service or anything that needs to be done to transfer over a mailing list. Those have, at least during my time, those were pretty easy to transfer over. I mean, that's one of the examples of if you have like an email provider, that's something you could hand over with like a username and password. So those are one of the easier ones to transfer over. Then the other question you had was, what was your second question?
You covered it all.
Okay. Oh, what you asked was, is there a minimum subscriber
Mailing
count?
list size, yeah.
Yes. I mean, even when I'm writing the listings, I might say this business has a subscriber list of 1,000 subscribers or over 500 subscribers. It's just nice to have.
Yeah.
And it varies too, if it even matters, because if it's an unutilized email list, you might have a 30,000 person email list, but if they've never heard from you, then that might not make any difference. So
Or some of us, they hear from us every day. So
yeah, I mean, if you have a 500 person email
utilized
list that you're engaging with,
Yeah.
like it's a community, then that can be very powerful. And you'll also see that in terms of, because I will also list where the traffic sources are coming from. And if you're seeing like 60% organic, 30% direct from the email list, and that shows that that is working, that it's you're monetizing that email list.
Okay. And here's one question. You and I talked about this the other day, but for everyone else, Shopify stores, Etsy stores, Amazon stores, what's selling now?
So Shopify and Amazon are still selling. And I mean, that's just kind of getting into other business models. And I mean, you have different types of buyers for that. I think, I mean, e-commerce was probably the biggest business model that we were selling and probably are still selling, to be honest. But we have seen this resurgence of content sites and Amazon KDP businesses, like digital based businesses that don't require purchasing inventory and maintaining it. So, I mean, I guess the e-commerce businesses tend to be the ones with the higher valuations, but those also come with inventory, which the buyer also has to purchase in addition to the business. So that's just like a different beast altogether.
What about digital products versus physical products? For example, a lot of us in this group are what we consider ourselves to be content creators. So they're doing things, printables, digital planners, printable planners, all of that sort of thing. And we sell either on our own store, on our own website, or we use other platforms like Shopify or Etsy. If we have a fully stocked store, for example, some of our people on the call today have got stores that have 200 evergreen digital products. It is probably, other than marketing it could probably run for years with just marketing a few hours a week and that's it. Are those selling? Or do people really have more of a desire to buy tangible products, physical product stores?
No. Digital product businesses are definitely selling as long as it's built off of a solid foundation and you're showing like consistent monthly sales on those products. Then it doesn't really, I don't think it makes a difference really. If it's like saying the difference between selling on Amazon FBA or Amazon KDP. It's just a different type of business. And some people are preferring to not have to deal with any inventory. And I completely understand that. And personally, I would be leaning towards that as well. Because it just, especially if you are a first-time buyer, unless you had this huge windfall from like a crypto sale or something, and you just want to put your money somewhere, you're probably not going to be you're probably going to be less willing to buy a high or mid six-figure business plus buy another $500,000 of inventory. So
Yeah.
Yeah, digital products I think are definitely a way to go, especially during this time with when the buyer's market, when there's more uncertainty in the buyer's market, there are more variables that like just where the direction of the economy. So
Well, you just brought up a really good point talking about investing in inventory, because sometimes that's above and beyond the purchase price of the actual website. There might be some amount of inventory, but you have to look at your operating costs moving forward. So you've got the price of buying the business today, plus the operating cost and investing in ongoing inventory cost. Whereas with the digital, it's pretty much profit moving forward. You don't have to buy any
yeah,
physical inventory, which is nice. And it's one of the reasons I switched over from, we used to do drop shipping. And it's been a nice switch getting over to digital from drop shipping. And that's a question I have for you, is drop shipping, because I know a few years ago, drop shipping was before the pandemic. Drop shipping was huge, but then a lot of drop shippers went out of business because they couldn't get the goods in. So has that changed? Has that marketplace rebounded at all? I know we've got at least two people on the call today there that have been drop shippers in the past, or is that kind of a dead niche right now?
Well, I recently wrote a listing for a drop shipping business in the past week, but I noticed that I've seen far fewer drop shipping businesses going live. They tend to, there's the shipping timeline issue. And then there is the issue that you don't control your own brand. So I guess
Yeah.
the thought of competitors and how do you actually differentiate yourself, not having any intellectual property such as like a trademark or copyright to protect yourself from competitors. Whereas with Amazon FBA, if you have a trademark on a product, you can show Amazon that, and you can protect your listing in some way. So that's another thing too on the asset stock document, which is the list of assets that your business has that a buyer will look at. Many of them do have trademarks, not so common with content sites, but many of the physical product businesses will have trademarks, and that's just further showing that there's a protection around the business.
All right. I think I've covered my questions. Is anybody else, before we're at the 90-minute mark here. Has anybody else got any more questions? Did we miss anything? I think we caught everything.
I have.
Yes, Ganti.
Sorry. If what I'm trying to see is, I'm a bit older compared to a lot of people here. So my horizon is from 6 to 12 months. I want to develop sites really fast, 10 to 12 different sites. So I know from what I heard from you, you want to have a longer lifespan, that is 3 years and so. But what I'm asking is, if I develop a site with good traffic, good income from a good sources, no backlinks, but it's a stable site, but the site is only 6 to 12 months old, will they still sell? It's a hypothetical question, but I just want to know.
Sure. So of course I won't speak on behalf of buyers, but I have seen sites consistently that are less than 3 years old. So that's definite. I mean, and those sites are being listed almost every week, I think. So it's definitely, they're definitely being listed, at least. I'm not sure on the exact percentage of them being bought. I think that would be a great question for a sales advisor to ask. Should I try to?
It is not. See, what I'm saying is my sites will be between 6 months to 12 months old, not more than that. So
Yeah.
do you have any listings of sites which are fresh, from a fresh domain, fresh site, it's only 6 months old or below 12 months? Do you have any sales record of those sites?
I would have to look up that exact on the back end just to make sure for you, but the 6 month seems a bit short, but there are businesses. I can say yes, we have sold businesses that are that new, because our vetting team in that case will reduce the timeline from a 12-month average to like a 6-month average. In fact, I remember during the pandemic, I don't know if you all saw on, like, it was somebody who created like how much toilet paper am I using.com or something like that.
I remember
Uh,
that. Yes.
do you remember that site? So he sold
Yes.
on Empire Flippers, and that was like 3 months old or something. Now
But
that's an
it took
anomaly.
advantage of the crazy trending that was going on with toilet paper. So he was getting
Right.
traffic hand over fist. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I think that site sold like the day of or something. So there are examples of that, but I don't want to, I don't
I
want to
think that
say
was
that
an
that's a common.
anomaly, though. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right.
One last question here: corporation versus personally owned sites. Does the new buyer really care what the legal status is of the website when they buy it?
Sorry, do they care about the legal status?
Yeah. In other words, is it incorporated? I mean, because they're in most cases are just going to be buying the website and the assets affiliated with the websites. They usually do, if there is an incorporated business that owns the
Oh, I see.
website, do you
That's fine.
transfer all of it, or
Mm-mm. You're just
no?
buying the asset. You're not buying the company associated with it. So
Perfect.
which is good because the buyer is not assuming liability of anything, any obligations that the actual corporation has.
Perfect. Perfect. Ruth Ann, we can discuss that kind of situation with Dr. Silber. We have one of the members of our group is Dr. Bob Silber, who is he's an icon in the internet marketing industry. He is one of the original attorneys specializing in internet marketing law. So
Awesome.
we're very blessed to have Dr. Silber with us, and he saves us a lot. So he's our guardian angel, basically.
Nice.
So yeah. So Bob, we'll discuss that with Dr. Silber in one of the future meetings. And with that, thank you so much for today. My goodness. I mean, if you look at everything over here in the chat box, we have had quite an interesting afternoon with you, and I appreciate your time today. And
Yeah.
everybody, I will make sure that you have your contact details. The replay will be posted in 48 hours. And Nick, I will be sending you, as soon as this goes through Zoom and gets processed, I'll send you your version of it so you can copy and download it and play with it as whatever you want to do with it. I don't care, it's yours.
Perfect.
But we appreciate your time today so much. And everyone, thank you for your time, and really appreciate everyone's time taking an hour and a half out of your day to come join us. Again, Nick, thank you again. And
we wouldn't have missed it. We would not have missed it.
No,
And
not at all.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Nick.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Really
It's been a
appreciate.
true pleasure here. And I do hope that you all are successful in the next 12 to 18 months or however long your timeline is. And
We
I
are
hope I
going to be
can
bringing
hear
you some
about it.
business, I can promise that. And it's probably going to be sooner than that, because some of us have businesses and histories that have been running for a while. We just got to package them up and pretty things up. And yes, one of the things that you brought up, you may have noticed there's a lot of people in our group that are of an age, as we say. We're over the age of 50 by a lot, and we are looking at the next phase of life. We want to wind down, and it's one of the things that Nick and I talked about in our initial phone call. Or just real quick, sometimes having that chunk of money that you get from selling a website does you more good in your next phase of what you want to do than having that monthly revenue. And a lot of us on this call are at that stage. Yes, over the age of consent. You got it. And a lot of us are at that stage where businesses that we have spent the last several years building, that nice chunk that we're going to get by selling it's going to be a lot more beneficial, and is going to be a lot better at buying that beach condo than those few $1,000s a month we're making in revenue. So you will see some of us sooner than 12 to 18 months. I can promise that.
I just have
Awesome.
one. I'm sorry, really
Yes,
sorry.
that's all right.
You mentioned about ClickBank. You have not seen many of the ClickBank. Is it because of some negative connotation, or people have
I
not
don't think so.
really developed it?
Yeah, there's not one that I perceived, at least. It might have just been what are the popular business models to build right now, but I'm not 100% sure why more
Because I
people haven't
already
been doing
have
ClickBank.
about 4 different sites uh, checked out, purely built on
ClickBank.
the ClickBank.
I would say just reach out to the sales advisor if they think that it would be helpful for you to add on a different revenue stream based on what your goals are. Then you can determine that at that point. But yeah, I would say just talk to them and see.
Yeah. Do you guys, either your sales team or yourself, any kind of a okay, we are looking for some sites in this area, because you're looking for buyers are looking for the sites, but there are no
That's a good
sellers
question.
in that area. And if you have those, send me, because I will build the sites really fast.
Oh, I see. I see. That's a good question. I don't think we've ever done that before, but yeah, maybe that's something we can consider in the future.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, everyone. Thank
Okay,
you
thank
so
you.
much for your time today, Nick. You have a
Absolutely.
wonderful week and a wonderful year. And
Thank you.
really, once again, thank you so much for your time and all the information you shared today. I have a feeling that we're going to be keeping some of your sales staff busy over the next few months. So
Great. Well, take care, everyone.
take care. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.